Right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Library Commission meeting of June 18th, 2020. Time is 4:30 p.m. My name is Michael Lambert, your city librarian. In the absence of having an incumbent staff member serving in the capacity of Library Commission Secretary, I will be serving as the default Library Commission Secretary this evening. Due to the COVID-19 health emergency and to protect library commissioners, staff, and members of the public, the San Francisco Public Library and the Corrett Auditorium are closed. However, members will be participating in the meeting remotely. This precaution is taken pursuant to the statewide stay-at-home order and all preceding and proceeding local, state, and federal orders, declarations, and directives. Commissioners will attend the meeting through video conference and participate in the meeting to the same extent as if they were physically present. Public comment will be available for each item on the agenda. Members of the public can observe the meeting using the Webex system by following the link in the library's event calendar or by calling 1-408-418-9388 and entering the access code for this specific meeting. The access code for today's meeting is 14664208882. When connected by phone, members of the public can dial *3 to be added to the public comment queue. Individuals joining via Webex should click the Raise Hand button in the lower right-hand portion of the participant panel in order to be added to the queue. Best practices for all public commenters are to call from a quiet location, speak clearly and slowly, and turn down your television or radio. Each commenter will be allowed the usual 3 minutes to speak. All commenters will remain on mute until their line is open. In facilitating this meeting this evening and to assist in moderating public comment, I will be joined for operations support by the library's digital strategist, Bill Kolb. Mr. Kolb will be calling upon members of the public by name or by caller number to prompt each attendee who wishes to provide public comment. Emailed public comments will be read aloud by myself, the Commission Secretary, after all live participants have commented. The chat function built into the Webex will not be monitored by commissioners or presenters and is not intended as a channel for providing comment or feedback to the Commission. Commissioners and presenters will not respond to content added to the chat. I will now commence with roll call. Library commissioners in attendance are President Dr. Mary Wardell Garaduci, Vice President Susan Mall, Commissioners Teresa Ono, John Lee, Pete Wong, and Connie Wolfe. The Library Commission currently has one vacancy, as former Commissioner Dunning has vacated her Library Commissioner seat. And now I will turn it over to Dr. Mary Wardell Garaduci, President of the San Francisco Public Library Commission.
Thank you very much to our city librarian, Michael Lambert. I'd like to officially call this meeting to order. Thank you to the members of the public who are attending this meeting remotely. And if you have not already done so, all the materials for this meeting are available for download on the Library Commission page of the library's website, which is sfpl.org. We have a total of 8 agenda items that we're going to be going over today. So we're going to begin with item number 1 on the agenda. And our first order of business is to open it up for general comment. Members of the public who wish to provide general public comment should now raise their hands in order to be added to the queue. If you are using the WebEx interface, click the raise hand button in the lower right portion of the screen. If you have called into the WebEx dial-in number, and which is 1-408-418-9388, please press *3 to line up to speak.
Thank you, Madam President. Operations is checking to see if there are any callers in the queue. And operations will let us know if there are callers that are ready. If you have not already done so, please raise your hand in Webex or press *3 to be added to the queue. And for those of you already on hold in the queue, please continue to wait until it is your turn to speak.
Madam President, operations has 5 public commenters in the queue.
Thank you, operations. Let's please begin allowing general public comment.
Zima Avalos, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hello, I'm Shima Avalos, 3630 Librarian 1 and a disaster service worker currently at the food bank pop-ups. This is an unprecedented challenge and we're all in uncharted waters. Library employees want to help our city and we have demonstrated as such by stepping up to serve the community in DSW deployments. Our first participation was when SEIU 1021, the union, provided SFPL with more than 65 names of library workers who were willing to take the first assignment at the food bank. We also have, as the city moves into the next phase of reopening, we are eager to come back and to contribute to the community as library workers. We want to ensure the health and safety of library staff and patrons is guaranteed before Library to Go is implemented. We can't do that if we're not involved in the re-entry planning process. We've been thinking about the best practices since shelter in place has begun. We're the frontline workers and we know the specific challenges each branch faces with reconfiguring our service model. We created a re-entry committee formed by union members. This re-entry committee presented reopening priorities at the labor management meeting, which was held on June 11th. The union and management are going to be meeting next week to continue the conversations about Library to Go. We're looking forward to continuing working with management on this important endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, will you queue up the next commenter?
Emily, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hi, my name is Emily Desirek Badrin. I'm a 3630 Librarian 1, a youth services librarian at the Marina branch. And right now I'm an activated disaster service worker at the San Francisco Marin Food Bank. So my comment kind of follows directly on Shima's. Library staff who are vulnerable to COVID-19 or have childcare issues due to school closures have been really mismatched to disaster service worker assignments and then forced to self-certify, which means that instead of being on paid furlough, they're burning through their leave balances like sick pay and vacation pay. We're in the 3rd month, or just kind of finishing the 3rd month of shelter in place, and those leave balances are running dry. And of course, most of our staff can't afford to live without paid work. While this might sound like an issue for the Department of Human Resources, there's actually something that SFPL can do. The library can increase the amount of telecommuting opportunities for staff and include telecommuting as a significant part of the library's reopening plan. We have so many skilled staff with areas of expertise that are just kind of going to waste right now. During the shelter-in-place order, there's never been a large-scale survey taken of the skills, vulnerabilities, or the schedules of library staff. And so staff have actually been passed over repeatedly for telecommuting and disaster service worker roles that they have real expertise in. Creating more telecommuting would be a total win-win because more telecommuting options would also mean an expanded library service, which is what we all want, I think. Since day one of shelter in place, I've heard library staff brainstorming ideas for how to serve the community. I've heard staff talking about our beloved patrons and our most vulnerable patron populations and how we can reach them. Staff have written up long lists of ideas about how to better serve community members during this time, but a lot of these ideas have gone unheard and unused so far. So what I ask is that library management sit down with staff and review a list of telecommuting options as soon as possible. And I also urge you to increase the role of telecommuting in the library's reopening plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. We can get operations, so we can have our next public comment ready.
Call-in user, your 3 minutes begins now.
I wish to ask the IT department and the city librarian why it is that, unlike the Board of Supervisors, you are requiring us to use a toll phone line. The Board of Supervisors uses a toll-free phone line. I don't know why the Library Commission could not have made that an option for us users and patrons. It's very good that we have some limited reference services available on the 5574401 line, but it's too limited. It ought to be expanded to at least the weekend. I don't know how you reach that decision. It's critically important that we expand the library services. There are still problems with the mail-in policy, the mailing policy of notices, because the library, contrary to the memo that Michael Lambert issued early in the year, let me put it this way, it seems to differ from the library's, Mr. Lambert's memo, in which he said that mailed notices would be resumed to people who don't have email. As I understand it, the library is emailing out the newsletter, which means that all of us, and there's 100,000 San Franciscans who don't have internet in San Francisco or more, all of us who don't have internet are not getting the monthly library newsletter. So this is a disservice, and it has a bizarre, disconnect from the intent of Mr. Lambert's memo, which said that overdue and hold notices would be sent to the U.S. mail in paper form to those who don't have internet. So I wish the policy to be far more consistent across the board. If you're going to put anything out to email internet users, you should also make it available to the people who don't have internet in the paper form. You should be mailing out the newsletter in paper form. But I urge the library to come back in normal business hours and practice as soon as possible, and even offer some remote internet. Sometimes people have a laptop and they can go to a Wi-Fi site and get some limited access that way. It's no substitute for the full access that many San Franciscans have to the internet, but it would help out those who are, for example, can you sit outside a library that has the Wi-Fi on and get some limited, for example, I don't have your agenda. I don't have your documents because I was unable to get to it. So there it is. I hope you can help us get some limited internet, and I think it's already been passed by the Board of Supervisors to encourage such access. Good luck.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, can you unmute our next commenter?
Call-in user, your 3 minutes begins now. Madam President, the second call-in user has been unmuted, but I don't hear anything.
Well, let's see if we can go to the next call-in, the next commenter. Let's see if we can unmute that individual.
Dee Dee Kramer, your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Dee Dee Kramer, and I'm a 3632 Librarian 2 at the main library. I'm currently deployed as a DSW worker at the San Francisco Marin Food Bank. I'm calling today to ask the Library Commission for its advocacy in asking the City Librarian's Office to institute periodic virtual all-staff meetings. Since the pandemic began in March, we've received no consistent system-wide instructions on telecommuting options, with the exception of main library staff receiving the application form. And we've received very limited information on current library programs and services, except as minimal updates and thank yous after services have already been instituted, with little or no opportunity to participate in planning, implementation, or decision-making. Library staffers want and need to be part of the library's ongoing work, even as we understandably prioritize our DSW deployments. We ask for your support in our request for more staff involvement in decision-making with respect to ongoing library services, DSW assignments, and reopening plans. We particularly ask that information be communicated consistently across the main library and branches. I'm aware that since many library staffers are off the clock, i.e. working DSW on paid furlough or on paid or unpaid leave, that offering in-person meetings would require some time approval and timekeeping adjustments. To that point, I ask that the Library Commission offer its support for the library approving a set amount of paid library work hours, for instance, 2 hours per month, so that those who are able and interested can attend. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, do we have another commenter in the queue?
Hello?
Yes, Michael Vincent, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hi, I'm Michael Vincent Danella Mercanti from Friends of the San Francisco Public Library. And it's great that the Commission's back in this format. I want to say that firsthand we at Friends have seen a lot of community members reaching out about the amazing online programming that the library has been doing. It's been a crazy transition for everyone, and the kind of wealth and importance of the authors and the community building online book clubs have been a real light spot during this pandemic. Also, the online videos, especially the STEM learning videos, have really become, we've been getting really great feedback on those as well. And the sweet story times that you'll probably hear about later, I think I saw on the agenda. We also have a lot of Friends members and community members talking about online resources. And I know the Commission has been advocates for online e-resources and the e-library for a long time, but seeing how that foresight brought us to having one of the most robust online libraries in the country is really inspiring. So we want to say thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, is there another commenter?
Madam President, that was the final commenter in the queue, except for the fact that one call-in user was unable to communicate.
Okay, so thank you for your comments. Are there any more requests for comment?
There does appear to be an additional call-in user.
Operations, if you would unmute that commenter.
Call-in user, your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. I've been on the queue since quite some time before you started. So I think that I appreciate the instructions that have been given and the detail with which they've been given, but it hasn't been clear whether if you unmute before the meeting starts that you'll be called. And I'm not sure if I was the fourth one. You really need to get some clarity about how the system works and how to prompt people to find out whether they are on the queue. On Friday, March 13th, the library basically closed its doors, and from the perspective of more than 100,000 people in San Francisco who do not have internet access, the library basically dropped dead. There's absolutely no service with one exception, and that is a highly reduced reference service that has dropped from about 65 hours that the library was open per week at various locations down to 35, almost cut in half, and only from 10 to 5 Monday through Friday. And otherwise, the library has made no effort whatsoever to inform the public who is not on internet and doesn't get email, doesn't get a chance to look at the library's website. Nothing for those people. At the same time, the library in various ways has been boasting tremendously about how its online offerings have been expanded and improved and more ebooks, on and on for the people who can pay to play. The mayor's office issued in 2018 or 19 its City and County of San Francisco Digital Equity Strategic Plan, which not only talks about the 100,000 plus San Franciscans who do not have access to the internet, but also breaks it down a little more. And what do you expect to find? Sure enough, the poorest people have radically less access, and racial minorities and older people. The library, which loves to boast about how there are everybody is accommodated. If you don't speak English, we've got 40 or 50 languages. If we have problems with reading sites, you can go and get large format, and on and on. And yet it's doing nothing at all. Where's the curbside service, which many other libraries have started? Where is possible mail to service delivered to the patrons? You should not be giving nothing to folks.
3 minutes.
You should be providing service to everybody equally.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Operations, are there any more commenters in the queue?
Madam President, an additional caller has joined the queue.
We'll go ahead and have that commenter participating give their comments.
Call-in user, your 3 minutes begins now.
Okay, I believe that's me, although I may have also been the second caller because I got here early, but nothing told me when I was actually to speak. I didn't know how many callers there were. I too have not seen the agenda because I only just found out about this meeting. I was impelled to attend because I heard, and I hope this is even the right item since I haven't seen the agenda. I apologize if I'm not. I heard from someone a report that the library was not going to open until 2021 for in-person visits. This would be a terrible thing, and I think it would hurt our reputation as a city. It would hurt the reputation of the library, which has been very fine up until now. And it would be a huge disservice to those of us who depend on the library. I'm fortunate in that I usually don't have to depend on the library for internet access. I do right now because my phone's been stolen, but and I'm using a little interim phone. But just to have new books, to stay au courant with maybe different magazines and newspapers that are not online necessarily, or that have prohibitive paywalls. All of this, these are vital services. And I would encourage you not to shut the public out for another year. It's really hard on us, hard on anybody who reads and anybody who loves books and all the other services that the library provides. So, and again, also, I would echo the gentleman who spoke about the inaccessibility of this meeting. That anyone who does not have a smartphone, does not have a computer, does not have web access regularly, can't be here to tell us how they feel and what they love about the library, what they miss, and what they would like to see return. So please be aware of that in the future. And I think 2021 is absurdly late. I appreciate the care behind some of the decision making, but I think that's going too far. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for calling back in the second time. Operations, are there any more commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters in the queue.
Okay, so so hearing no further requests for comment for general public comment on is now closed.
Madam President?
Yes?
Pardon me. I was instructed to cue the commission secretary that it might have been emailed comments to be read into the record.
Thank you, Operations. And Madam President, there are no further comments for this general public comment, but we will have some emailed comments for the next agenda item.
Thank you. So hearing that there are no further requests for comment on this particular item, general public comment is now closed. So we're going to move on to item number 2 on our agenda, which is a discussion of what the last commenter referred to, which is we're going to talk about the reopening plan. And we do have some explanatory documents, which include the city librarian memo dated June 15th of 2020, and that it goes into the phased reopening for library services, the state of California COVID-19 industry guidance, as well as the service response presentation. And what's going to happen is that we're going to do this presentation, then we're going to go back into general comment on item 2, and then we're going to open it up to our commission discussion.
Thank you, President Wardell. It's been over 3 months since the San Francisco Public Library last opened our doors to library patrons. The world around us has radically changed in the subsequent time since we closed for business on Friday, March 13th. You referenced the explanatory documents in your packets. In the city librarian's memo, I referenced the fact that over the past few months, while our neighborhood libraries have been closed, library workers have been working hard as disaster service workers in myriad roles. There's been tremendous positive feedback and media coverage highlighting library staff contributions at food pantries, hotels, providing shelter to individuals experiencing homelessness, and as contact tracers helping to notify individuals who may have had exposure to the coronavirus. While the bulk of the library's workforce is supporting citywide responses to the public health emergency, other library personnel have been working throughout this time to maintain our infrastructure and keep critical operations going. Library services have continued with access to digital collections and some virtual programming. I'm proud of the work our staff has performed to support school children, for example, in San Francisco as they completed their academic year this spring. And our Chief Analytics Officer, Randy McClure, has a brief presentation to share some of the highlights of how we've been able to continue providing service. Randy?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is Randy McClure, Chief Analytics Officer, and I'm here to walk you through a presentation of SFPL's COVID-19 service response. Next slide, please. Let's start with a high-level view of what we're doing, what we've been doing, and what we're going to discuss in this presentation. So following recommendations issued by the Department of Public Health for social distancing to help curtail the spread of COVID-19, SFPL closed its doors at 6 p.m. on March 13, 2020. SFPL, however, never stopped working for the public. So what have we been doing? We've been continuing to provide robust electronic resources. We've worked at expanding our patron base. We are providing educational support. We've invested heavily in new virtual programming options. You can see to the right of the slide a still frame of a 4-minute show and tell that was posted on YouTube in the past couple months. We are archiving the city's response to COVID-19, and we have been providing our staff as disaster service workers since the very beginning of the emergency. Next slide, please. So let's start with a quick look at what we're doing with our electronic resources. This slide shows daily activity of e-resource usage. Since the library closed on March 13, and as shown in the slide by the vertical red dotted line, usage in 5 of our major electronic resource platforms immediately jumped, and it has slowly ticked up ever since. Next slide, please. As this slide shows, circled in blue on the far right, we're currently showing a 57% increase on 5 of our major electronic platforms as a result of COVID-19. Some resources, such as Access 360 and Canopy, have effectively doubled in usage over the past 3 months. And you can read at the bottom of this slide an example of a patron satisfaction with Canopy in particular. This individual seems to be loving the selection of movies available on that platform. Next slide, please. And even though our buildings have been closed since March, our Wi-Fi service has remained on to help address the digital divide. As you can see from the graph in this slide, we've continued to provide 24/7 high-speed internet access to many San Franciscans who need it. We're seeing an average of about 4,000 to 5,000 connections per day. And as some people have moved completely to working from home, there in fact are some branches where the length of an average connection time has doubled or even tripled. Next slide, please. Along the same lines, this slide shows that signups for new library cards to access our electronic resources have also been robust. To date, we've signed up nearly 6,000 new patrons for electronic access, and we're seeing a steady flow of about 50 to 75 new activations daily. Next slide, please. With schools facing unprecedented closures as a result of COVID-19, SFPL has also quickly worked with the school district and 4 private schools in San Francisco to ensure that children around the city have full access to our electronic materials. As you can see in the slide, nearly 18,000 students were activated this spring, pushing our total number of Scholar Cards up to nearly 64,000 citywide, including every SFUSD student in the system. We've also continued offering 2 reference services, our LibAnswers online service and our TIP telephone service. Since closure, we have received over 11,500 reference questions through those 2 platforms, averaging about 125 per day. Next slide, please. And given that SFUSD began its virtual learning program in mid-April, we've continued to provide homework help through our partner, BrainFuse. As you can see in the slide, student assistance through the database component of the platform, tutorials and so forth, has increased by a few percentage points from pre-closure levels. But homework help with live tutors has more than doubled in usage since March. Next slide, please. Community programs and partnerships has ramped up quickly in offering virtual programming, especially with respect to its Sweet Stories platform that publishes on Instagram Live as well as YouTube. As you can see in the slide, we've published approximately 40 virtual story times so far, with each video averaging nearly 1,200 views per offering. The most viewed story time so far on YouTube was The Hike, read by none other than our very own city librarian, Michael Lambert. Other local celebrities such as Mayor London Breed and Dave Eggers have also contributed their time to reading Sweet Stories. Next slide, please. CPP has also been ramping up with various virtual adult programming offerings, as you can see in the slide. The COVID Q&A with notable UCSF geriatrician and author, Dr. Louise Aronson, is an example of a popular Zoom program that we published on YouTube earlier this month. Next slide, please. And the SF History Center has also been working hard to archive information about the COVID-19 public health emergency. As you can see in the slide, they have received over 200 submissions of material, and one individual in particular contributed 700 photos alone. Next slide, please. Finally, SFPL has been exemplary in stepping up to the city's immediate and ongoing need in activating disaster service workers throughout the COVID-19 emergency. As of last week, more than 350 employees were deployed as DSWs, with the majority of those assisting those in need by providing support as food bank workers, hotel site monitors, and contact tracers. So even in these unprecedented times, SFPL remains committed to serving the community. And this concludes today's COVID-19 service response presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. As city librarian, I fully recognize how anxious library staff and our beloved patrons are for reopening library services to our community. I too am very eager to reopen for increased public service. The library's management team has been scenario planning for a phased resumption of library services for several weeks now, and we are now closer to securing the necessary approvals. The Office of the City Administrator has released guidance to all city departments on the development of department site-specific health and safety plans to align with city offices' COVID-19 safety protocols. With this guidance, my team is now able to craft the necessary health and safety plans that will allow us to consider important variables like floor plans and requirements for physical distancing. Our goal is to stand up as many library locations as possible for a contact-free service model that would allow patrons to request and pick up items in our collection. We intend to call this service SFPL To Go. And fortunately for us, we've been able to benefit from watching our peers both nationally and now regionally launch their versions of curbside pickup. The industry-specific guidance for retail issued by the state of California provides a good outline for how we strive to deliver this front door type service. Equity will be a key consideration in determining which locations are able to resume services. Health and safety considerations will also be a top priority, as we'll have to focus our finite custodial and security capacity across fewer locations. We do not yet know how many locations will be able to reopen in the coming weeks. We also do not know when we'll be able to reopen. The first step for us is to complete our site-specific health and safety plans for each site and submit them for review to the Office of the City Administrator. And that work has begun in earnest the past couple of weeks. Concurrently, we'll be working with the city's Department of Human Resources to recall library staff from disaster service worker activations in order to deliver library services again. And of course, we'll be working with our labor partners to plan for reopening and engage staff. That concludes my presentation, and my team and I are more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Library staff would also welcome your feedback and input on reopening considerations. Thank you.
On this agenda item. So operations, how many individuals, are there individuals in queue for public comment?
Madam President, the beginning of your announcement was muted, so I unmuted you midway through. Would you please make it again so that everyone's clear that it's time for public comment?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for unmuting me. I was just trying to practice being quiet over here. First of all, I wanted to thank City Librarian Michael Lambert, as well as Randy McClure for that presentation. And so at this time, operations, if you could let us know how many individuals are in the queue for public comment.
Yes, Madam President, there are 2 individuals in the queue for public comment.
Okay. If you could unmute the unmute the first individual so that they can begin their public comment, please.
Call-in user, your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes, thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association, and we can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. To repeat, libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. The lovely presentation about all of the wonderful things that are happening online was very interesting, but it was labeled not as the service response for those who have access, but just plain service response. And maybe what you should have included, and you did not, was what you're doing for the some 12% of the city population that does not have access to all of those virtual services and materials. There wasn't a single word about what you're offering to those people, with the exception, if you can figure it out, that the tip line, but it was not mentioned that the tip line has been cut in half with respect to the hours, and the hours that patrons have repeatedly over the decades told the library they most want, evenings and weekends. There are 0 hours of evening and weekend reference phone service. It's gone from the open hours of libraries to 0, 10 to 5, Monday through Friday. It appears that you have in mind a whole range of folks and have completely ignored, once again, the folks who do not have access. A previous speaker quite rightly said there was no mention to folks getting mailed notices about anything, including don't show up to bring your books that are due because the libraries are closed, and so are the book returns. Somebody could have gotten killed from not knowing what the rules would be, the extended due dates and so on. Somebody could have been killed who didn't get the word by letter, who didn't have internet access. And right now, again, all the options that are possible, and many libraries, ALA has a survey, I believe the date is about a month ago in May, 26% of libraries are offering curbside service. Others have all kinds of extensions. Phone service extended. What about story time by phone? What about mailed service or delivered services? What about phone service that can bring you?
Thank you.
My 3 minutes are up.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, if you can unmute the next commenter, please.
Karina, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hi, yes. My name is Karina Cizona, and I live in District 6, and I'm a longtime, very enthusiastic user of Maine. I have comments about a couple of things, the online media, Wi-Fi, and SFPL to go. So first of all, regarding the online media, I concur that it's been really great, and I appreciate that there's been an expansion both of the collection and of the length that you can take it out, as well as offering more flexible ways to renew. So all those things have been really great. However, it is nevertheless a very small subset of the physical collection, and it's offered for much shorter periods. And so I realize that right now there's a big budget shortfall that would make it hard to do more with that. However, to the extent that it's possible, I would like to see the suggest an addition form being included directly on the electronic collection pages rather than only on the account pages or page. And also clarify there that electronic items can be suggested even if the library already owns physical versions, so that the materials that people really need electronically can be added during this time when it's not possible to get physical access. Regarding the Wi-Fi, I agree that it's a really vital source. I, for 2 years, didn't have Wi-Fi, and I really depended on going to the library and able to have any internet access at all. However, this is a service that serves not just library patrons, it serves people who are outside the library. It's a city service, and I would really like to see this coming, at least in part, out of city general funds, rather than being solely a budget burden on the library. The library is meeting a lot of needs, and this is not one that's exclusive to the library. Regarding SFPL to go, I'm wondering how items on hold will be handled. I didn't see that addressed in the attachments or discussed. I would also like to see the cap on hold increase, much like with the electronic materials, so that it's possible to take out more items and hopefully thus decrease the number of contacts that patrons and staff have to have. I'd also like to know what the plan is, if any, for materials that just simply cannot be checked out, including things like microfilm, microfiche, materials from the History Museum. Is there some way that people will be able to, for instance, request that those, be scanned if they need access to them? Something, although that again comes up on the problem of internet access, but what can be done to make sure that a lot of materials that are not available to be handed over can nevertheless be accessible during this time? I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you so much for those comments. Operations, are there any further commenters in the queue?
Madam President, we have 3 additional commenters.
Okay, operations, if you can unmute and allow the next commenter to speak.
Elizabeth, your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you very much. Can folks hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
My name is Beth Kelly. I'm the chair of the board of the Friends of the San Francisco Public Library. And I just want to make a couple of quick comments. And most importantly, I just want to turn back to the fact that library is an essential service. And so when we're looking at the different phases of reopening and considerations for COVID, each delay in each phase really has a negative impact on racial justice and economic justice in the city. And so as the library's resources are being diverted, I just want to make sure that the city, and as well all of you know, just look at the bigger picture of what each of these delays is. And that's the end of my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, will you unmute the next commenter?
Marie, your 3 minutes begins now.
Hello, this is Marie Cepela, Executive Director of Friends of the Library. It's nice to see you. I can see some of your videos on. I hope you don't see me because I have like a baseball cap on, but in my kitchen. But yeah, it's a crazy world. And just really 3 months later, 3 months seems like a year. And it's really nice to know that the library can come back, and it will come back. I really just wanted to say hello, express gratitude, and to say, we're always there. We're still here. We are also going through our own restructuring and the challenges that are involved in surviving in the city as a nonprofit. But everything's going well, and continue to be in contact with the library leadership. There's so many innovative things that the library is doing, and yet, of course, everyone wants them open. It's a big, long-term question of public health. But we are here. We certainly, I think that if there's anything that this pandemic has done is pulled back even further the curtain for all of us to see that equity matters, access matters, fairness matters, access to resources. The differences with of who has and who has not is even more exacerbated. My child is in the public school system. I get it. There's lots of students who need who have lost learning time. There's lots of workers who are now needing the resources that the library has. And the only thing, and the very special thing that librarians can provide, which they will basically do anything to help you. And so to see the library responding with things like individual phone calling for displaced workers, and the way that the library is responding in very innovative ways with the e-resources that are available, we're very grateful. Of course, we all want to see the curbside services back and all of it. But I just wanted to just reiterate, we're here. We're going to roll with what the library needs. We know that there's going to be extreme demands over different ways in which we support the library virtually and those kinds of programs in terms of safety. There's safety issues. We're willing to look at those too. And basically to say, thank you. And, as Beth said, we're all concerned with the equity issue. I know there's many competing factors about the way city staff are used, and emergency we certainly are in, but we're hoping to see a return, and glad to hear that there is some return to some middle librarians to their roles as they take on what will be a new world. I mean, the libraries will be in a new world, and we're here and we're ready, and we are just as ready to help face those challenges as we ever were. So thank you, and thanks for having the meeting.
3 minutes. Madam President, there's one additional public commenter.
Thank you.
Mary, your 3 minutes begins now.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Harris. I'm president of All My Neighbors in Action. And the things that Marie just said about equity is always on my mind. Live in the Ocean View, Merced Heights, Ingleside neighborhood, and our library is Ocean View. Actually, mine is Ingleside, but I've always lobbied for the Ocean View going back to Mayor Brown. Anyway, as far as the reopening plan, waiting anxiously to hear that. But in the meantime, I'd like to make sure that our library has curbside pickup if possible. I know that going into the library, it's the smallest, so social distancing is an issue, but we still need access to our library as much as possible and library materials. I would also like you to please give consideration to giving us a bookmobile in front of our library to serve all the kids that live in our neighborhoods, our two schools being Sheridan and Jose Ortega. We have been going through a rough time in the OMI, getting access to our seniors to food and masks and gloves and everything, hand sanitizer, everything they would need to stay safe. And I would just want to go on record as asking very politely if you could give consideration to a curbside service for us and a bookmobile until we can open. And I anxiously await the reopening plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, are there any other commenters in the queue?
Madam President, that was the final live public commenter. I believe that the Commission Secretary has an emailed public comment now.
Yes.
Thank you, Operations. I will begin with the first of 8 emailed public comments. And this public comments comes from Harold Wright. Comments for Library Commission meeting June 18, phased reopening. Dear Commissioners, the San Mateo County Libraries, Santa Clara County Libraries, San Jose Libraries, Sonoma County Libraries, and Contra Costa County Libraries all have curbside pickup of books now. Why has the SFPL gone from being the best library in the country to one of the worst? If other libraries can do this, why can't we? Please do not delay service any longer. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there there's additional comments via email?
Yes, Madam President, I will now read the second emailed public comment. This comes from Linda Adler. Hello, Commissioners and other esteemed meeting attendees. Number one, since March 14th, 2020, a huge number of San Franciscans have been completely cut off from access to SFPL's books, magazines, DVDs, CDs, newspapers, etc., because we don't have access to computers or electronic devices. We don't have home Wi-Fi. Many materials are only available in a printed format, or we are unable to read or view electronically formatted materials. Many patrons need access to printed materials, DVDs, CDs, etc., to help ease our sense of loneliness and to stay engaged and informed, especially with the 2020 elections on the horizon. A lot of San Franciscans lead analog lives. I have a 90-year-old friend who is not connected digitally and is suffering and depressed because he can't get access to printed books, DVDs, and library items he's used to. I'm not able to tell if the SFPL COVID-19 service response contains, compares, or contrasts information on the number of patrons who depend solely on non-digital library materials. 2. As we learned from a misdirected email from the Las Vegas Clark County Public Library, that system is already up and running again with COVID-19 protections for staff and with curbside delivery of services to patrons. Please let me know you are not aware of this timely and detailed email, and I will provide you with one. Every other public library system in the Bay Area, Contra Costa, Marin County, Alameda County, Sonoma County, and San Mateo County have reopened for patrons with various curbside services. SFPL can also open its libraries for curbside service. SFPL can use and tailor the experiences of these other systems. We don't need to start from scratch. SFPL can also open its libraries for curbside now. San Franciscans love our library and depend heavily on the non-electronic services it provides. We all know our library won't look like it did before March 14th for a long time. SFPL must have the will and begin taking aggressive steps to reopen our libraries, at least for curbside. SFPL to go, I think it is being called. This includes moving library staff back to their library jobs, opening the book returns, and starting to process items on hold. This can be phased in, but it must begin immediately, and the schedule for reopening SFPL, at least for curbside, must be aggressive. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the comment.
Okay, public comment number 3. This is from Leslie McMillan. Dear City Librarian, I am unable to attend this Thursday's commission meeting, but would like to make a comment/request about the future of the library from a 14-year-old SFPL patron. I think the library's physical branches should stay closed as long as it's necessary to keep everyone safe. If they do need to open, they could do certain services in a social distanced outdoor capacity, such as perhaps a curbside service where patrons could request books from the library, in person to account for smartphone ownership gap, and library staff could retrieve them from inside. Or there could be periodic outdoor library days where books are available in a large park or parking lot setting. They could even offer mobile Wi-Fi. In any case, safety for staff and patrons should come first. Coronavirus is still a formidable and growing threat despite our feelings of impatience, and the library should remain a vector for knowledge, not disease. I also would like to request you do everything you can to retain the library staff who are well qualified for their jobs, have done nothing wrong, and will be ready to return in person as soon as it's safe. With huge surpluses in the city budget, surely we can keep these employees on the payroll. We need a large staff to plan and coordinate new library services that are both safe and inclusive to patrons that don't have computers or smartphones, especially as schools have shifted to distance learning, widening the technology gap. The library is an important defense against inequality, which has been increasing due to the COVID-19 crisis. Please prioritize programs to address this. While librarians and other staff are often inspirational, none of them signed up to be in dangerous jobs that would put their health at risk. Reassigning them or pressuring them to volunteer to be reassigned or face consequences to vastly different jobs should be a last resort. I can see how, from an administrative perspective, it can be an attractive idea to shuffle city employees around a bit to balance available labor with job needs. However, when these jobs are substantially different and carry a high health risk, it's not right to force these employees into unsafe labor. Any conversation on changes to staff jobs should center staff or their union representatives. I love the library and I love librarians. I trust and hope you can find creative ways libraries can continue to serve the community in a way that's safe for everyone. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you for the public comment.
All right, number 4. This is from Carl Russo. Dear Library Commission, please discuss, prioritize, and expedite opening the curbside pickup of books and movies at branches via online ordering. Thank you.
Thank you for the public comment.
All right, the next public comment comes from Serena Satyasai. Libraries are a vital public service to treasure, and I appreciate your thoughtful consideration of how best to reopen them while keeping everyone safe. As a longtime San Francisco resident and voter, I ask, no layoffs or pay cuts for library staff, and consider hazard pay for staff who have public-facing roles. Prioritize the health and safety of staff and patrons alike. Implement rules that limit the number of patrons at any one time to reinforce social distancing. Consider a ticketing system to help evenly distribute patrons. Require mask and disinfecting of hands for entry. Ask patrons to check their health against COVID-19 symptoms and either request they stay home or limit their access to curbside services. Invest in digital services. Better enable and more broadly promote programs that enable residents to request books to be delivered online to their homes. If outdoor spaces are available, bring back some children's programming this summer. Respectfully, Serena Satyasai, District 3 resident.
Thank you for the public comment.
Next public comment comes from Latimer Leilani. As a lifelong supporter, user, and lover of our public libraries, it's essential that all considerations taken at this time strengthen and sustain our public libraries' people, places, and programs. Number 1, people. Both employees and visitors, many who rely on these services like children and elders, must have certainty that they can return to our libraries and avail of the amazing services, not just books, and programs offered. Protect the jobs of library employees and protect their health by implementing the same practices all employers are implementing right now. Mask, sanitation, distancing, etc. Number 2, places. Every library in our city is a safe and welcoming space. For our children and elderly, and many others, the library is a daily or weekly space to study, read, learn, write, reflect. It's not difficult to implement the CDC recommendations for distancing and sanitizing in any of our libraries. They're not overcrowded, and staff can be trained to take direct action for cleaning and sanitizing everything from computer workstations to tables. Think like a gym where every person is asked to wipe down the equipment before and after use. Something similar can be implemented in the library. Number 3, programs. Our library programs and the people who run them are essential to keep our community connected, informed, and vibrant. Bring them back. We rely on them. We need them. And there are never enough of them. High school kids all had to skip SAT testing due to COVID and now need those preparation courses more than ever. Younger children need to early education reading programs. With schools closed and doing virtual classes, the library can play an important role in bridging the learning gap we're going to see now. Please open our libraries, bring all the employees and programs back, and help our community return to being a vibrant, welcoming world.
Thank you for that public comment.
Next public comment comes from Susan Latham. Dear Library Commission, please discuss, prioritize, and expedite opening the curbside pickup of books and movies at branches via online ordering. Respectfully.
Thank you for the public comment.
All right, one more public comment on this agenda item. This is from Denise Bradley. Dear Library Commissioners, please prioritize and expedite the opening of curbside pickup of books, CDs, DVDs, and other library materials at SFPL branches via online ordering. With proper planning and execution, curbside service that is safe both to library personnel and patrons can be offered now that the transmission of COVID-19 virus is better understood. Other library systems throughout the Bay Area have begun or started this type of service, including San Jose currently and Oakland starting June 19th. Thank you for considering my input. Sincerely. And that concludes all the emailed public comments.
Thank you. So at this particular time, general public comment is now closed on this agenda item. And we are going to move on to item number 3 on our agenda, which is a discussion of...
Madam President,
yes.
do you want to have the commissioner discussion of item 2?
Oh,
before...
yes. Please forgive me. I forgot that we need to discuss the item number 2. Yes, commissioners, how are you doing? Great. Okay, so we're going to move into our commission discussion. So let's take the budget off of the screen there, and let's stay in the on item number 2. And if you want to even back it up even a bit more, because we are discussing, so that the commissioners and the viewers can see what the commissioners are discussing. So at this particular time, I would ask commissioners to utilize the hand-raising function to alert that you would like to make a comment. There is not any action beyond discussion. So this is really to discuss the presentation from our city librarian, as well as Randy McClure. And Randy, if I can make sure that you're available as well to answer or respond to any commissioner items.
Yes, I am.
And I'm going to ask operations to manage the hand-raising function. And at this particular time, I'd like to call Commissioner Connie Wolfe.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted that we can be here today together in this way. I first want to just publicly thank the incredible staff of the San Francisco Public Library for their extraordinary efforts during this very challenging time. I feel very proud because I have been serving as a volunteer on a regular basis at the San Francisco Food Bank. And it is really wonderful to see the staff there supporting and providing services in this period of challenge and incredible need. So thank you to the entire staff. I also just want to acknowledge that this is such a difficult time because there was no planning provided for COVID-19 and the pandemic arriving. And I really appreciate the way in which the staff jumped and rose to the occasion. And of course, this is probably the most difficult and challenging time in our history for people who do not have access to internet access. And the library is not an exception. It is an issue for telemedicine, for every kind of industry. So while I really empathize with the numbers, the 12% or whatever percent of people in our community who don't have internet access, it is a challenge for every industry right now. And so I appreciate the library's efforts to increase its ability to make the resources online more accessible. I love that that the Wi-Fi is accessible to patrons all over the city by getting close to their library. I think that's fantastic. And also, I appreciate the efforts at the tip, the call-in numbers. I also just want to say that one of the things I feel incredibly grateful for is leadership from our mayor at this time and how she has really ensured safety in our city. And so while there are many references to libraries around the country that are opening up and doing great things for their constituents, I think we have a lot to be grateful here in the Bay Area where COVID-19 has been managed extraordinarily well. We have very few casualties and our mortality rate is very, very low. So I think we have to recognize that this isn't about keeping up with our neighbors. It's about doing what's best for our citizens, short-term and long-term. So I just want to say that while I am eager to get my books, I want so many books right now from the library. I also want to honor the way in which our city has responded to COVID-19 to keep everybody safe. And so keeping that in mind as we open up, we are desperate to have the libraries open. I know that. I know every staff member wants a library open. I know all of us, we want them open, but we have to do it in a way that will keep our citizens safe and healthy. So I just want to, again, thank the leadership. I want to thank every staff member at the library for the efforts they're undertaking at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wolfe. Commissioner Ono, if we can unmute her mic so that she can make a comment.
Hi, thank you everyone for being on the call. Connie, I think you read my thoughts perfectly. Everything that Connie said is exactly what I would have said. I should say Commissioner Wolfe. And I also want to thank everyone for being on the call and taking time today. Thank you.
Is there any additional discussion among the commission?
Madam President, Commissioner Lee has raised his hand.
Okay, Commissioner Lee, we would like to unmute yourself and you can share.
Yes, I'm sure that our city librarian has thought about the complex situation about reopening the library. I'm just wondering, in his research and working with Department of Public Health, what does he see that may hold opening our library later than what other counties have done?
More than happy to answer that question. I believe Commissioner Wolfe said it very well, that the city and county of San Francisco is unlike our neighbors, and really we are an outlier nationally in how our mayor has led us through this pandemic. We do have the lowest mortality rate of any major city amongst our peers by a wide margin. And that's consistent with the city's priorities in this time. The city's priorities are to protect vulnerable populations and to ensure adequate availability for identified populations within the city's alternative housing and shelter portfolio. They're, poised to adapt the medical surge plan to meet the needs of our community based on modeling. There's a high priority for supporting the needs of people experiencing homelessness, prioritizing testing and sheltering resources, supporting communications for the phased reopening of San Francisco, and continuing to plan and coordinate for multi-hazard incidents. So the city has a strategy. There's an economic recovery task force led by our assessor recorder, Carmen Chu, and our treasurer, Jose Cisneros. And so what the city is trying to do right now is strike a balance in the provision of government services and provide services in a safe manner, but most importantly, in alignment with public health guidance. So departments such as the library, we cannot proceed with plans about reopening until we can align our departmental planning with citywide planning. And as I alluded to in my presentation and in the memo, a key step in this approval process is the submission of site-specific health and safety plans for any site that we look to stand up. And so our staff, our leadership, we're focused like a laser right now on working through what's required of us so that we can secure the necessary approvals to reopen.
Thank you for all the thought and work that you have put into that. I'm sure that you are very well attuned to the need of the library. Thank you. And I also want to take the opportunity to thank the librarians who are on the DSW, disaster service worker, that role. And it is really marvelous. The heart is right there. I'm very pleased. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Are there any further commission discussion? Seeing that there's none, I'll just make my final comment on agenda item number 2. I see this is a very complex situation that that we're facing here in the reopening plan. As we've heard through the public comments, and we've heard it very clearly that there is complexity to the lives of individuals that are being impacted as disaster service workers, as well as a complexity with ensuring that we maintain the high rate of continuing to be a city that is outperforming other cities in regard to having lower amounts of infections and even better, a lower amount of individuals who experience mortality. And so it's difficult. These are difficult decisions, and I just want to say thank you very much to City Librarian Michael Lambert, who's in the middle of a very balanced but yet complex ecosystem. I know that he has been trying to make decisions based upon the values of San Francisco, and as well as trying to meet the needs of multiple constituencies. And so we just want to acknowledge everyone, Michael and everyone, for the work that you're doing. And we look forward to the phased approach of the San Francisco Public Library reopening. So with that, I think I can officially move on to agenda item number 3. And this is going to be a discussion on the fiscal years 2021 as well as 2022 budget. This is going to be a discussion item for the commission again. There is no action to be taken. We're going to open it up. And there are explanatory documents for both those fiscal years in this budget presentation that's going to be shown now in both attachment 1 and attachment 2.
Thank you, Madam President. Our Chief Operating Officer, Maureen Singleton, will be providing this update.
Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. I'm happy to be here today to give you an update to our budget. We last met with you in February to approve our budget, so I'm going to walk through and give a little bit of a review first of what was approved, and then talk about the evolving budget climate and the impact that that has on the budget as we move forward. Next slide, please. So in February, the commission approved budget option number 2. And in that, if you may recall, we included some enhancements that are reflected in the summary table here. But just as a quick high level overview, one of the things that we did is we enhanced a proposal for financial coaching from 3 days a week as presented in January to 5 days a week. We also considered adding gender neutral public restroom monitoring at the main library at an estimated $120,000 each fiscal year. And then for facilities, maintenance, and infrastructure, we enhanced the request for fiscal 22 by $500,000 for a total allocation for that investment of $1.5 million. What that resulted in is this summary table here on this slide that indicates the total proposed investments for fiscal year 21 were $12.6 million. And for fiscal year 22, it's $17.3 million. The details of those investments are available in attachment 2 as or attachment 1 rather, as an explanatory document, and I can walk through those at any point with the commission later on if they have questions. Next slide, please. So after approving that budget and entering in all those investments, this is what the proposed budget would be in totality by sources and uses for fiscal 21 as well as fiscal 22. The data presented here is as of February 21st, 2020, and you can see there for fiscal 21, the total proposed budget in this table was $182.43 million. In order to cover the costs, not only did we need our annual sources from the Library Preservation Fund as well as miscellaneous other sources, we needed to tap into the Library Preservation Fund's fund balance at approximately $10.2 million. For fiscal year 22, our estimated budget on the expenditure side was $170.26 million, and that would require use of the fund balance of approximately $500,000. Next slide, please. So as we all know, with this COVID-19 public health crisis, we have seen a change in the city's budget climate. What you see here in the table compares the projected deficit for the city from the data available in December 2019 to May 2020. In December, the city was estimating just shy of a $200 million shortfall for fiscal 21 and around $224 million as a shortfall for fiscal 22. Since that date, as a result of the response to COVID-19 public health emergency, the projected shortfall for the city has grown to $1.7 billion over the course of a 3-year fiscal period. For fiscal 20, we're looking at, as a citywide shortfall, $246 million per estimates from May of 2020. And for 21, as you can see, the estimated shortfall is just shy of 754. And then for 22, it's 735.4. According to the mayor's office, some of the key assumptions in the deficit for fiscal year 21 and 22 had to do with the delay of the wage increases for fiscal 21 as well as 22. They were assuming no additional COVID-19 related costs in the budget years and no additional support or loss from the federal government or from the state. They also indicated that there's no assumption of ERAF monies in our upcoming budget. And just as a point of reference, ERAF stands for Educational Revenue Augmentation Fund. There are, as you could imagine, still some risks and uncertainties on the horizon, and a couple of them are highlighted here. It has to do with the duration and intensity of the public health risks, a slower or later economic recovery than assumed in the estimates in May, the level of city response to COVID, if it needs to be sustained over the coming years, and of course, federal and state revenue risks associated with the public health emergency. Typically, we discuss the budget at the Board of Supervisors each May or June, but because of this emergency, it has shifted back our budget schedule. The mayor will introduce a balanced budget to the Board of Supervisors on August 1st. Then the board's Budget and Appropriation Committee will have budget hearings in August. After they're done with their hearings, it will go to the full Board of Supervisors for consideration in September. And by October 1st, the mayor will sign the budget. Next slide, please. Specific to the library, how did our revenue change for the Library Preservation Fund? As you know, the Library Preservation Fund is made up of both the general fund baseline as well as the property tax. In December of 2019, there was an assumed revenue for fiscal 21 of $171.2 million. The revised estimate for May has that Library Preservation Fund figure at 152.7, which is about an $18.5 million reduction for 21. For fiscal 22, the revenue change is about 15.93 for a total two-year reduction of $34.41 million. If you compare the two different fiscal year estimates for our sources, that equates to about a 10% reduction over what the revenue was assumed to be in December. The mayor always provides general guidance to departments as we figure out what to do and what to propose in our budget. Her general guidance this time was to prioritize core services, services for vulnerable populations, equitable services for the underserved populations, streamlining operations, making sure our operations in the upcoming fiscal years is aligned with the COVID-19 operating measures from the Department of Public Health, as well as other city entities. Non-general fund departments and funds, of which the library typically falls under, we were told to balance within our allocated revenues. The general fund departments were asked to cut 10% of their general fund with a 5% contingency, and by fiscal 22, that reduction would be 15% as compared to fiscal 21. Next slide, please. So how did the library propose bridging this funding gap? We were planning for reopening to be in alignment with any direction from the Department of Public Health. We're prioritizing core services and services to vulnerable populations. We said we needed to reevaluate the budget investment proposals that were approved in February of 2020. We wanted to be sure to prioritize capital asset renewals so that we weren't having any of our facilities fall into disrepair. We also wanted to be careful about economic uncertainty, so limiting our fund balance usage and other areas in which we could plan for uncertainty. Next slide, please. In attachment 2, which is provided again as part of the explanatory document packet, you'll see the proposals that we are recommending reducing over the next 2 fiscal years as compared to what was presented to the commission and the commission approved last February. These are broken out by our strategic priorities, and I'm just going to run through them pretty quickly now. But I'll start with Premier Urban Library. For the concept of promoting libraries for all, we're recommending not investing the additional $25,000 per fiscal year. We are going to go back and look at and figure out how can we reconfigure our baseline budget to be able to continue to promote and awareness about the available programming that the library has. As far as affirming the main library as the Tenderloin Branch Library, that was a one-time investment planned for fiscal year 21. and we are proposing that we defer that effort to a future budget cycle. For literacy and learning, we had assumed in February that we would anticipate about $190,000 increase would be needed to address some tariff cost assumptions in the upcoming fiscal year for fiscal 21. At this point, we are anticipating that the cost increases might not evolve given the changing economic environment. For youth engagement, we had recommended increasing our budget by $15,000 for refreshing the Play to Learn equipment structure. At this point, we recommend deferring that to a future budget cycle. Another deferral we're recommending under digital strategies is shifting the kiosk renewal program out to a new cycle. For organizational excellence, we defer the implementation of a survey consultant for the annual patron satisfaction work from fiscal 21 start to a fiscal 22 start. And then with respect to the gender neutral public restroom, we believe that given the our reopening plans that we can fund that within the baseline allocation of $500,000 so that we would not need the enhancement of $120,000. Next slide, please. So our largest reduction in our proposed budget will be in the area of facilities, maintenance, and infrastructure. The first proposal is to defer some of the key funding for the Ocean View Branch project. You may recall in February, we were going to invest aggressively over the 2-year period to fund that program. At this point, what we're recommending is instead of budgeting $8 million in fiscal year 21, that we would budget a net amount of $2.5 million for Ocean View and defer the $13.5 million to another fiscal year. For Chinatown, we would also invest a net amount of $2.5 million in fiscal year 21 and defer the total funding for the program to future fiscal years. And with respect to these two programs in particular, we would continue to try and work with the mayor's office and the controller's office to see if there are any alternative sources for us to move forward with these programs. The other reduction we're proposing is approximately $200,000 for the senior playground at the Richmond Branch Library. In a prior fiscal year, Supervisor Fuhrer was able to secure around $50,000 for that cost. And the current estimate that we have from the Department of Public Works is a total cost of $100,000. So the net difference needed would be only $50,000. So this reduction would allow us to fund that program and keep it moving forward. The last reduction is an ongoing reduction of approximately $25,000 to refresh and update restroom accessories and faucets in the library system. We have gone back and re-examined our budget to try and figure out how we can fund that need through our base level funding. Next slide, please.
Maureen, I think you muted yourself on this particular slide, so if you want to start from the top.
Okay, sorry, I don't know how that happened, but I will gladly start again. So this is a summary slide, and what it does is it tells you with all those specific reductions that we just walked through, the net reduction for fiscal 21 is $26.23 million, and for 22, it is $13.88 million. Next slide, please. And the other activity that we did, of course, was to take a look at our baseline budget and what were some of the costs that we thought we could reduce over time for the next 2 fiscal years that would help us also not only meet the idea or meet the reduced annual revenue, but also reduce the impact or the need to use the fund balance. In here, you can see that for fiscal year 21, we recommended a total reduction of $1.8 million, and for 22, a reduction of $1.3 million. The cost categories span various activities such as travel, minor furnishing. Some of our work orders say we anticipate fewer costs for our central shops in maintenance and fuel in the upcoming year. Obviously, we'll see some reduction in the need for programming, supplies, as well as food. But our largest reduction is for workers' compensation, and we were able to capitalize on changing needs, and we have agreement with the Department of Human Resources on that reduction. So if you were to add up the 2 categories, both baseline and changing investments in our budget proposals that were approved in February, for fiscal 21, that's about a $28 million reduction. And for fiscal 22, it's about $15.2 million. This approach allowed us to prioritize core services and services to vulnerable population, reduces the fund balance use, allows the library to plan for economic uncertainty, and maintains capital renewals and allows for partial investments in our branch projects. Next slide, please. So the net effect of these proposals would be a total budget for fiscal 21 as of last Friday of $155.04 million. In order to balance the planned expenditures with our resources, we would need to dip into fund balance by about $1.5 million. For fiscal 22, we're looking at an estimated expenditure budget of $155.68 million, which would necessitate the need to use the fund balance at about $2 million. Next slide, please. So the next steps, again, are balancing the budget with the mayor's office. We'll have the board hearings at the Budget and Appropriations Committee in August. The full Board of Supervisors will consider the budget in September, and by October, the mayor will sign the budget. Next slide, please. And then that concludes my presentation. I'm available if the commissioners have questions. Thank you for this opportunity to give you the update on the budget for the upcoming cycle.
You're muted, Mary.
Thank you, Maureen, for that detailed fiscal year, 2 years update. That was a very good presentation. At this particular time, I'd like to move us to our public comment phase, and I'm going to ask operations to alert us to how many people are in the queue for public comment.
Madam President, there's currently 1 person in the public comment queue.
Okay, would you please unmute that person for to allow for to give a public comment?
Megan, your 3 minutes starts now.
All right. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Megan.
Thank you. So my name is Megan Monahan, and I am a 3630 Librarian 1 at the North Beach Branch Library. I am a children's librarian. I was in the first round of volunteers to do disaster service work at the SF Marin Food Bank headquarters, and I am currently awaiting an assignment to work as a hotel site monitor. I am here to ask the Library Commission and Michael Lambert to please advocate for library staff and library services in the next budget. It feels strange to have to ask for such a thing, but unfortunately, library staff has received very little communication from our management team ever since the pandemic struck. We've been mostly in the dark about any plans for any future openings as a library, as our staff is absorbed almost completely in disaster service work or has self-certified. We are concerned that the system has allowed the city to determine that our profession is non-essential, further enhancing the myth to non-library users that libraries are unnecessary. But as we all here know, libraries are necessary. Right now, the city is in economic disarray and unemployment has reached 12.1% according to the Employment Development Department. More than ever, the city needs its library services and our trained library staff to perform those services. In pre-pandemic times, patrons came to the library for more than just books. They came to the library to see staff who look like them and speak their language, increasing their comfort level with asking for help and services. We were able to help out with book recommendations, of course, but also unemployment forms, SNAP applications, and the ability to communicate and translate information for patrons who spoke languages other than English. Computer access is a big deal. I'm concerned about not refurbishing the kiosks in the next budget cycle, not to mention all of our essential children's programming. I am very sure that these needs are still there, if not growing, and the library's excellent scores on the 2019 satisfaction survey, scoring an unheard of A-, the highest score of any city department ever, were not a result of our excellent materials collection, but because of our excellent staff. San Francisco is and should be a premier urban library. In order to maintain that level of excellence, we need our staff. Please say no to layoffs and budget cuts. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that comment. Operations, is there any other callers in the queue?
Madam President, there's an additional public comment on the phone.
Please put the public commenter through, please.
Caller, your 3 minutes starts now.
Yes, may I have a 30-second warning, please, since it's hard to tell when you've started and so on? I'm asking a question. May I have a 30-second warning or some warning before the end of my comment?
Please continue with your comments, Mr. Warfield.
You know, when you have a new technology and people on the phone who can't see what the timing looks like, it wouldn't hurt to make it easier for the public. This is Peter Warfield from Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. It would help very much if, in consideration of folks who are on the telephone, you would announce who is speaking. You would announce what page you're on. This document doesn't even have page numbers. I've spoken a number of times and over the years about page numbers. These are all the more important now. And ignoring a technical question is really rude. We hear a lot about vulnerable populations. We've seen this at least twice in this document. What are you talking about? I've pointed out some vulnerable populations, poor people, African Americans, older folks, particularly those who at this moment have a gate closed in front of them when it comes to library service, except for a little bit of light in the greatly reduced telephone reference service. I would like to see specific budgeting, for example, for letters to communicate and in other ways communication with folks who don't have easy access to online. I'd like to see consideration and planning. For example, what about laptop lending? What about adding things that don't exist for those who don't have a computer, like story time on a telephone? I am concerned that the staff might be getting some kind of a bad deal with workers' comp being reduced by more than $500,000. The question that I would key is not whether somebody approved it, but whether there's any kind of a reduction or diminution of services. I also think it's quite shocking that in these changeable times, you should even consider getting rid of a survey of the public. Of all times, this is when you need a survey of the public to help you figure out how to serve the public better.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, are there any further individuals in the queue for public comment?
There are no additional live commenters. I believe there are some email comments.
If we can have city librarian who's acting as secretary to please read those emailed public comments.
Thank you, Madam President. This comment comes from Kitty Kravacic. Hello, my name is Kitty, and I'm a San Francisco resident and SFPL patron and supporter. I'd like to extend my comments before the Library Commission meeting scheduled for Thursday, June 18th. First and foremost, I'd like to ask for no layoffs or pay cuts to library staff. Second, if you are considering plans to reopen the library in any capacity, please prioritize the health and safety of staff and patrons alike. We love books, but people first, please. Thanks so much for reading and advocating on my behalf. Kindly.
Thank you for your comment. We have the next, are there any further email public comments? There are no further ones. So I'd like to move us into our commission discussion on the budget. Commissioners, if you could begin to raise your hands, and we could begin the process with Maureen Singleton to respond. Commissioner Ono, please unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to thank Maureen for the great presentation, and also I wanted to comment how well the entire library team did on trying to come up with some reductions that take into consideration the public and staff. And it's a tough time right now, and you guys had a big task before you, but I really appreciate everything that you've done, and this was something I would not want to do, but thank you very much for taking the time and also being creative and innovative. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ono. Commissioner Huang.
Thank you to everyone who's involved in this. This is very hard, to say the least. This is the type of situation where you unfortunately are going to make very, like, you're not going to come out of this with 100% happiness across the board. But I completely agree with Commissioner Ono that I think the leadership here has taken a very strong stance on what we should do. And fortunately, we were able to, because of things like the Library Preservation Fund, for those listening in, this is the importance of that sort of funding mechanism for the library system, that we're able to focus on our capital projects instead of any other parts of the budget. So just wanted to echo what Commissioner Ono had said. I do have a question for our Chief Operating Officer. Were there any additional cuts that you have in mind in the case of economic uncertainty, or in cases where we receive any requests to further cut the budget? Are there any additional areas that you would look to first in that regard?
Yes. Thank you for your question. This is Maureen Singleton, the Chief Operating Officer. First and foremost, we would really take another look at capital in order to avoid impacts on labor. We would also want to take another look at some of our non-personnel costs to see if there are further reductions that we could make there that wouldn't have a detrimental impact on the provision of services. Particularly in light of if we begin curbside service, there will be certain costs that we wouldn't be incurring right away since we wouldn't be operational in a way that's consistent with how we were prior to March 13th. So we would take a hard look at those categories first before considering any other activities or any other reduction options. And then on equipment, that is also something that would have to be considered, deferring it to a future budget cycle as well.
Thank you, Maureen. Yeah, fingers crossed that we don't have to get there, but I think I speak for the rest of the commissioners as well as we thank you for your smart approaches to all types of problems, pandemic or otherwise. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Huang. Further commission discussion on the budget presentation. Commissioner Lee.
Yes. Thank you, Maureen, for preparing this very, and Michael in preparing this very thoughtful budget and making hard decisions and under a lot of uncertainty. Talking about uncertainty, for example, in making this budget, is there an assumption of when a library is likely to reopen?
I'll take that question. Thank you for the question, Commissioner Lee. As I mentioned in agenda item number 2 in our reopening plans, the library does not have a date. I'm hesitant to put a date out there because there are so many variables outside of our control. But just to shed a little insight into the dynamics, I think first and foremost, we have to get approval from the Office of the City Administrator for our site-specific health and safety plans for any library locations where we intend to deliver service. Library staff did complete our first site-specific health and safety plan for the main library last week. It was the first time we had gone through this exercise with the templates that the city had provided, and we have submitted that plan and we're awaiting feedback and prospective approval. While we wait to hear back, we are continuing to move forward with working through site-specific health and safety plans for the branches. The other variable is working with the Department of Human Resources to orchestrate the return of library workers to our department to resume library services. And it's a very complicated maneuver because the city still has tremendous needs for staffing to continue feeding and sheltering people and doing contact tracing investigations. So we're going to work closely with the Department of Human Resources to see if we can help backfill those positions, or it's possible the city will find other city workers from other city departments that may allow for the return of library workers. So, the other variable that could impact our reopening is the possible need to secure an amendment to the public health order that would be specific to libraries. It's not clear if that will have to happen. We could perhaps be covered by existing public health orders related to retail and curbside pickup that's happening in the private sector. So I just provide that insight all to say that we do not have a date in mind, and I think these cuts that we've identified, we've tried to be strategic to avoid making reductions in personnel.
Thanks for sharing the complexity that you and Maureen have to deal with, and also your leadership team have to deal with. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Any further discussion on the budget among the commission? Seeing that there's none, no hands are raised. We want to thank you, Maureen, for just the very thoughtful presentation, as others have said. And we're fortunate to have you shepherding us through this process because there are difficult days potentially ahead, not only for the city of San Francisco, but also for the SFPL. Thank you for laying out some of the scenarios where we are right now. None of us expected to be here 3 months ago. And so we will continue this discussion. As I said before, this is not an actionable item. And we will continue to have discussions with our budget situation. So with that, I am going to move us on to our agenda item number 4. And this is a discussion and possible action on the Library Commission Secretary recruitment process. There are explanatory documents. One of them is this as a city librarian memo dated June 15th, 2020. It's regard to the Library Commission Secretary recruitment and the 2006 Commission Secretary job announcement.
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioners, this evening's Library Commission meeting marks a couple notable milestones. It is the first virtual Library Commission meeting in our institution's history, but it is also the first Library Commission meeting in 13 years in which the San Francisco Public Library did not have our now retired Library Commission Secretary, Sue Blackman, helping to facilitate the meeting. Ms. Blackman had perfect attendance over this time period, and she is now deeply missed. Sue, if you're listening to this meeting, thank you for everything you've done, and we miss you, but congratulations on your retirement. As a result of Sue Blackman's departure, the Library Commission is now faced with the need to recruit her successor. Our Human Resources Director, Lori Regler, is present to provide you with an overview of how the Library Commission may proceed with recruiting the next Library Commission Secretary. Lori?
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone. As Michael said, I'm Lori Regler. I'm the Human Resources Director for the library. I'm here to talk to you about the Library Commission Secretary recruitment. You should have a memo in your packet that provides the details behind what I will be reviewing with you today. Under the San Francisco Charter, the Commission has the authority to appoint an executive secretary. The recruitment process that we will use for the Library Commission Secretary is to prepare a job description for the position, review the scope and needs for the position to ensure the appropriate job class is used. We will prepare and post a job announcement for the position, receive and review applications, conduct first-round interviews with qualified candidates, and hold a closed session meeting for the commission to interview the final candidate or candidates and take action to select a candidate for the position. So that outlines the process that we will use. The memo in your packet details the 2 options that are before you today for conducting the recruitment process. Under option 1, the Library Commission delegates responsibility to library staff to conduct the recruitment process and bring a qualified candidate or candidates to the commission for a closed session interview and appointment. Under option 2, the Library Commission would delegate responsibility to library staff and designate a library commissioner to work with staff to conduct the recruitment process and bring a qualified candidate or candidates to the commission for closed session interviews and appointments. So we're asking that you consider these options and approve one of these options, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lori, for your presentation and these having supporting documents. At this particular time, we're going to move to our general comment on this item, and then we're going to move back into both the commission discussion with possible action as requested by the library staff. Operations, do we have public commenters in queue?
Madam President, at this time, there are no live public commenters, and my understanding is that there are no additional email comments.
Okay.
Excuse me, Madam President,
Okay.
just as I finished saying that, someone raised their hand.
Okay, would you please unmute so that public comment can be heard?
Your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes, am I on?
Yes, you are. We can hear you.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. I repeat, Library Users 2004. I hear some noises. Library Users 2004@yahoo.com. I'm repeating this because the sound quality is very poor on the telephone that I'm using. And so it's very difficult to follow some of the conversations that are going on. From what you have described, first of all, I'm disappointed that we don't have an agenda item on Sue Blackman and her departure. I had told her at some point, perhaps about a year ago, that in another country, they celebrated, a relation of mine celebrated the 12-and-a-half anniversary of their togetherness, and that I wanted to congratulate her on 12-and-a-half years. Well, the 12-and-a-half years had not yet hit. So she laughed and said that she wasn't really expecting to stay for 25 years, but in any case, 12-and-a-half hadn't quite yet happened. So I think some words of appreciation might be useful for the retired one. With respect to the options that you have before you, you have done the option 2 previously, for example, with some artwork and other projects. But I don't really see why you should have only option 1 and 2. It seems to me that the commission should be fully responsible for this recruitment and fully responsible for directing it, rather than sort of tagging along with the staff and having one commissioner. So I think the commission should take full responsibility. That doesn't mean excluding staff, but it certainly means that it should take the lead and take control and maximum
Thank you.
input.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, are there further callers in the queue?
Madam President, there are no further callers.
Okay. Hearing no further requests for comment, public comment is now closed on this particular agenda item. I'd like to move us back into the commission discussion, or actually into a commission discussion on this agenda item at hand, which is the Library Commission Secretary Recruitment. As we heard from our liaison library leader on this particular item, Lori Dregler, she has provided us supplementary documents as well as 2 options. And as I heard Lori communicate, is that an action is not required, but I believe an action is requested based upon the fact that they gave 2 options available. So this is a time for both library discussion on the item. First, I'd like to take discussion first before we move to action. So are there any library discussion on this item? Oh, yes, Vice President Mall.
Well, I think that there will be conversation about Secretary Blackman, but I would just like to say that I wanted to thank her for her service, and she did a wonderful job trying to herd cats. Not saying that the commissioners are cats, but she kept us all sort of on the right path. So lots of thanks to her. Going forward, I would vote for or recommend the second option, having 1 member of the commission be part of the recruitment process. I think Commissioner Ono would do a great job. And my only caveat is that we do this quickly and efficiently, and that it doesn't take as long as the search for the city librarian, because that seemed to go on endlessly.
Thank you, Commissioner Mall. Commissioner Huang.
Thank you. Sue Blackman did a fantastic job and leaves very, very big shoes to fill for whoever we are able to find next to help the commission carry forward its work. Sue Blackman, if you're on the phone, thank you so, so much for the wonderful work and your friendship throughout my short time here, but I'm sure, again, on behalf of everyone, the years of service that you've provided have been endlessly helpful to the library as well as the Library Commission. I would love to second Vice President Mall's comments. I do think we should have a library commissioner in the process. We have, again, the benefit of having someone who knows this institution very well and knows the role of the Library Commission Secretary very well, and has been part of the commission for such a long time that she knows the ins and outs. And Commissioner Ono, I think, is the right person out of all of us to kind of help with this. So if there is a motion to vote for option 2 specifically to nominate Commissioner Ono, I would support it whenever we do end up taking that action.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I yield the rest of my time.
Okay. Is there any other, thank you so much, Commissioner Hong. Is there any other discussion on the item? Oh, I see Commissioner Ono.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Lori, for the presentation.
Commissioner Ono, can you make sure that there you go.
Okay, I got it. Sorry, I wanted to thank Lori for her presentation, and I wanted to also thank Commissioners Mall and Hong for their nomination of me, and I appreciate it, and I am honored to do it. But I do also want to second what everyone has said about Sue Blackman. She did an outstanding job, and we are going to miss her. And we're sorry she's not here on this WebEx. We wanted to see her face, but if you are on here, Sue, thank you and enjoy your retirement. And hopefully we can get it done quickly and efficiently, but they are big shoes to fill. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Ono. I'm monitoring and I do not see any further hands up. Is there any further commission discussion on this item? Seeing that there's no further discussion, I would like to inquire whether a commissioner would like to make a motion in regard to option 1 or option 2, and if it's option 2, if you would name the individual that you would like to see move forward in the library secretary search. So it could be the people that said it before, but I would like for there to be an official response to this motion.
Madam President, just before you moved on to the next portion of the discussion, Commissioner Lee did raise his hand.
Oh, he did? Okay. Commissioner Lee, you snuck that in there. I missed you. Go ahead, Commissioner Lee.
Yes, I certainly will support the move of option 2. Being a curious person, I'm just wondering, with librarian, there are, so to speak, of a qualification and certification. With the secretary, is there such a sort of thing of, besides the general description of parliamentarian?
I think that's a question for
Lori.
That's a good question. I think we could include that when we're developing our job description, or make sure that that is part of our process to include that type of skill set and experience.
Thank you.
Before I move on forward on the motion, is there any further discussion on this item? Commissioner Wolfe, is your hand up for a discussion?
No, I was going to make a motion.
Okay, my question right now, is there any further discussion on this item? We don't have the benefit of being in person, so it's more difficult. Okay, and so at this time, Commissioner Wolfe, I will call on you to make a motion.
Thank you, President. I would like to make a motion to go with option 2, to have the Library Commission delegate responsibility to the San Francisco Public Library staff and designate Commissioner Ono to work with the staff to conduct the recruitment process.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Wolfe. Is there a second to Commissioner Wolfe's motion?
Yes.
Madam President, Commissioner Wong has raised his hand.
Commissioner Wong, please.
I second the motion.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Wong. We have a motion and a second on it. Is there any further discussion on this item? Operations asking to see if there's any other further hands. Okay.
Madam President, there are no hands raised at this time.
Thank you very much. Then I will, I'm going to have to call each commissioner's name and ask that when I call your name, please indicate an aye if you are in favor to the motion and the second on the floor, or no if you are not in favor. Okay, I'm going to begin with my roll call list I have right here. Commissioner Wolfe.
In favor.
No, it's aye. Thank you. Commissioner Lee.
Aye.
Commissioner Ono.
Aye.
Commissioner Mall.
Aye.
And Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
Thank you all. We have a decision and approved motion, and we will move forward with that and have Commissioner Ono work with the staff of the San Francisco Public Library, specifically with Molly Regler, on the library secretary recruitment process.
Madam President, would you also like to indicate your vote?
Oh, yes, I forgot. Yes, I am a commissioner too, huh? So I'm so focused on everyone else's process. I say aye to officially put me into that roll call. We don't have the benefit of face-to-face.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And in my capacity as Library Commission Secretary, I will just review that Commissioner Wolfe has made a motion, which was seconded by Commissioner Wong, to approve option 2 for the library staff to move forward with the Library Commission Secretary recruitment, and with Commissioner Ono representing the Library Commission, and Commissioner Lee voted in favor. Commissioner Ono voted in favor. Vice President Mall voted in favor, and President Mary Wardell Garaduci also voted in favor. The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations, Commissioner Ono. We have great faith in you, and as you can see from your fellow commissioners, and thank you so much for your additional service for this very important role.
Thank you. I hope I can live up to it.
Oh, you will. So we are going to move on to agenda item number 5, which is the city librarian's report. This is an opportunity for our city librarian to give us updates, specifically looking at our SFPL racial justice statement, the Summerstride, as well as the SF Poet Laureate initiatives and programs. And there are explanatory documents for all 3 of those areas.
Thank you, President Wardell. In preparing the city librarian's report for this evening's commission meeting, I thought it would be appropriate and important to lead with sharing our organizational statement that makes it clear that San Francisco Public Library exists in this moment to champion racial justice and equity. This statement was prepared by the co-chairs of the library's Racial Equity Committee, our African American Center librarian, Shauna Sherman, and our Community Engagement Manager, Alejandro Gallegos. I'd like to introduce these 2 presenters to share their perspectives on how San Francisco Public Library intends to move forward in centering racial equity and how we deliver library services to the community. And I will call upon Shauna Sherman first.
Hi, thank you, Michael, and thank you for having us here, commissioners and public. I just want to say we're just really excited to continue the work of the Racial Equity Committee that we started a couple years ago. Just before the close down, we had been hosting real talk sessions with our staff, and they were very well received. People want to talk about race, and we are very excited to try to figure out how we can continue those kinds of conversations, possibly move them to the public in the SIP scenario, and in the future following Department of Public Health guidelines. So I'm just really excited to continue the work we've been doing. And I was so happy to hear a lot of support for equity at the public library. And thanks again for your support.
Thank you, Shauna. Alejandro?
Alejandro, if you can put your mic on.
Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. After so many meetings, you would think I would remember to do that. We're lucky that we get to meet virtually, and I think at this, Sean and I were discussing that, like, at this kind of enraging and discouraging, yet encouraging in some ways, and to be quite honest, absolutely fatiguing time, we want to thank you all for having Shauna and I here, and for your interest in equity and specifically for racial equity. Our committee's initial reaction kind of to this moment has centered along 3 general tracks, and those are: number 1, remote racial equity training for staff. Number 2, engaging staff in other ways, including suggestions for self-care, Zoom town hall meetings or discussions, education and learning resources, maybe offering other ways to get involved locally, not necessarily library related, but offering other ways that people might want to be involved. And number 3, looking further at library services, practices, and procedures. Shauna alluded to how this kind of continues some of the, well, this does continue some of the work that our committee had been undertaking prior to COVID closure. For example, Shauna led and her work group led and hosted 2 sessions for all staff of our Real Talks, which is an acronym that stands for Racial Equity at the Library. And we'd also begun presenting at staff meetings, including branch managers, Council of Neighborhood Libraries, and Adult Services. And kind of those 3 general tracks fall in line with the Racial Equity Action Plan that our committee has been working on. Regarding that plan, we're still awaiting the official framework from the City Office of Racial Equity. And that was scheduled to happen now in June, but due to COVID, there's been an understandable delay. And then just a quick reminder about our Racial Equity Action Plan. That's kind of our overall framework. The 4 main topics in our action plan are number 1, culture, number 2, workforce, number 3, community engagement, and number 4, services and service delivery. We really, it's difficult for our committee to get together with all of the different roles that we're currently doing, but to a person, we're all really looking forward to continuing to study ways to make the lives of our residents and our staff more equitable. And thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Alejandro and Shauna. Next, I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Michelle Jeffers, our Chief of Community Programs and Partnerships, with her reports on the library's signature summer learning program, Summerstride, and an announcement regarding the San Francisco Poet Laureate. Michelle?
Thank you, Michael. Hi, Commissioners. I'm Michelle Jeffers, the Chief of Community Programs and Partnerships. Thank you for having me here tonight to present to you Summerstride 2020. As you might expect, when we closed in March, that Summerstride was almost fully planned at that point. So we made a major shift to replan Summerstride for this summer. At times it was, it was a challenge, but I think that our commitment to ensure that the students and children of San Francisco have a chance to participate in a summer reading program was the most important thing. And so we wanted to keep to the spirit of that and make sure that we had a robust and welcoming program that we hope reaches as many children in San Francisco as possible. Next slide. This year we worked with the mayor, Mayor London Breed, who also recognized the importance of avoiding the academic summer slide and taped a PSA for us, extolling the Summerstride program and encouraging all San Francisco families to read at least 20 minutes per day. Next slide. As we've done in years past, we have partnered with Chronicle Books and an artist and illustrator to create the beautiful graphics for our Summerstride program. This year, it was Allison Farrell, whose artwork was featured, her book, The Hike, was the featured artwork, and it was also time to celebrate Golden Gate Park's 150th anniversary. So Allison created a number of custom pieces for us, including a game board that a tracker for your reading that takes you on a walking tour through Golden Gate Park, starting at the Standing Gate and ending up at Ocean Beach. Next slide. As my staff would say, we adopted a growth mindset, which I think means that we were just willing to pivot and change really quickly. We figured out how to develop guidelines and taught ourselves how to do online programming. So we created an array of virtual programs for families every week with something basically every day of the week. Our average program lineup for the summer is about 10 programs a week, rich list of STEM programming, local presenters and performers, nature booths with the national parks and the Golden Gate Parks Conservancy. We also maintained our teen leadership cohort known as YELL, Youth Engaged in Library Leadership, and we are having virtual sessions with them, and we have 29 teens who are going through that program with us and learning about library resources, and also will eventually be delivering book lists and programs for the library before the end of the summer. All our programs are live streamed either through Zoom, YouTube, and Facebook Live. And we've also provided a bunch of print materials too that people can have to stay active with the summer. Next slide. Thanks to our partnership with San Francisco Unified School District, which is many years going now, we actually, knowing that there is a digital divide, we mailed our Summerstride reading tracker guide to 60,000 children in San Francisco. That included the tracker, as I mentioned, that is a walk through Golden Gate Park, but it also included a book list so that families could know what they should be reading this summer. That book list is always created every year in partnership with the SFUSD teacher librarians and our own librarians. We also worked very quickly when we closed to make sure that the Scholar Card program was available to activate library cards digitally for all SFUSD students. I think Randall McClure alluded to this, but we just wanted to make sure that everybody could access the rich resources of San Francisco Public Library. Next slide. This is an illustrated version of the reading list. This is what it looked like that people received at home, so they could pick from it. And there are Chinese language and Spanish language titles on the book list as well. And we also went through the list right before we sent it out to make sure that 90% of the items on the list were available through our digital platforms. Next slide. We also upped our resources for student success by creating a lot of librarian-led public service announcements about how to access our resources, such as BrainFuse, an online tutoring resource. We also highlighted our research tools. We worked with the school district and the San Francisco Loves Learning television program on KTVU to get these messages out to the community. And we also provided resources for the big play date at home so that people could print out creating playful games in their home with household items to keep the idea of play as learning going this summer. Next slide. Thanks to the California State Library, they provided an online software system for tracking your reading time this summer called Beanstack. And so we were able to take advantage of that system so people who had the access to online could track their times online. And again, the printed activity tracker was also there. So we have 2 ways this year to track your time. Next slide. And we still maintain our prizes. We will still have the annual book tote prize and our Reading Ranger badge to give out. And we are collecting names, and we're working out the details to make sure people can get them when we do reopen, at least for curbside service. Next slide. You can see one of the things that we changed midway through is that we had this beautiful artwork by Allison Farrell, but we actually adapted the artwork to model the appropriate behaviors in San Francisco right now, such as social distancing and wearing masks. So we added all that to the artwork to make sure that it was relevant to our city at this time and place. Next slide. And this is just to thank our great sponsors who have stayed with us for Summerstride this year, including Friends of the Library, the city, the school district, the national parks. They were all into keeping Summerstride going this year, even though it looks mighty different than it has looked in years past. And that concludes my presentation on Summerstride, but I'm happy to talk about the next item as well. Next slide. The Poet Laureate. So I truly believe that the literary arts and poetry and writing is what's going to help us heal from this situation we're in. And so I was pleased that we got to continue moving forward with the nomination process for the next San Francisco Poet Laureate. As you know, Poet Laureate Kim Shuck was appointed in 2017, so she is coming to the end of her term as the Poet Laureate. And so we have started taking nominations for the next Poet Laureate. It's a community nomination process, and we began in late May taking nominations. So far, we have more than 40 nominations to date, and we will probably continue taking the nominations through the month of July and then move into the next step of the process. The appointment is made by Mayor London Breed, but the library facilitates the process for the Poet Laureate selection. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. And that concludes the city librarian's report.
Thank you very much to all of those presenters. I'm sure that there'll be many comments at the end, but before we go into the discussion for the commissioners, just move into our general public comment on this agenda item. Operations, can you let us know how many individuals, or do we have commenters in the queue?
Madam President, presently there are no public commenters in the queue.
Okay.
And now there is one.
Okay. If we can unmute that commenter, please. Thank you.
Caller, your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. Again, we can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. Thank you very much for these presentations. And it's always good to hear from some of the folks that we don't always hear from, although we usually hear very frequently from Michelle Jeffers. The artwork looks wonderful. I'm very concerned about something you may have heard me mention earlier. On the numbered page 5, called SFUSD Connections, it says in the second bullet item, or B item, diverse titles focus on ebook formats. Why is there a focus on ebook formats? What is superior or better or wonderful about ebook formats? What's wrong with books? With respect to the mailing, I'm very happy to hear that Michelle Jeffers was able to arrange that 60,000, she said, San Francisco USD students were mailed the tracker, which is a charming little step-by-step, I guess, toward the goal that you can keep track on, and it's actually made out of paper or a form of it. If she can send 60,000 students Summerstride tracker, why can't the library send 19,000 patrons who have requested mailed notices information about what's going on with the library during COVID-19? With respect to the statement from the public library, I'd like to point out I certainly agree with the intentions and some of the details I appreciate hearing about. There's a phrase here talking about examining our services and policies with racial equity in mind. So I'd like to read you from the report that I mentioned earlier. Internet usage among Black folks in the city, 86%. Latino, 92%, Asian Pacific Islander, 93%, white, 96%. You need to focus on those who do not have internet access and serving them so that they don't fall behind.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, are there further commenters in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional commenters.
Okay, seeing that there are no commenters at this time, we're going to move to our commission discussion on this item, which is the city librarian's report. Commissioners, you have library personnel that just provided you an update of the activities of the libraries. Are there any questions or comments you have for them? Commissioner Lee.
Yes. I have a question on the Summerstride. I think it's as good as it was before. I remember in past year, there is a partnership with Park and Rec whereby kids are taken to meet the rangers or that program. With COVID, would this still be going on, although maybe on a limited sort of a size? Because I went by the Park and Rec, I can see they have summer camp program limited to 12 children. Would that be something that would be also doing with the Summerstride?
I think that's for you, Michelle.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Lee. What we had done in the last 3 years, I think it's 3 years, it could be 4 now, is we provided shuttles to the national park sites every summer that was funded by the Golden Gate Parks Conservancy. We are not doing those shuttles this year because of the danger of having people on a relatively small bus sitting next to each other. We usually cram them into those 35-seat buses to go out to Muir Woods and the Presidio and things. So we had to cancel that part of our program this year. But we are working with the parks both on distributing our game boards through at Golden Gate Park and with the park recreation centers. And I should have mentioned, we're also distributing books. So we have ordered or already distributed some 10,000 children's books through the Human Rights Commission for children and families this summer, just free books as a giveaway.
Great, thank you. I also like to add my thanks to the work that is being done on the Racial Justice Act. And a lot of behind the scene that is not visible until now. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. I'm going to call on Commissioner Wolfe.
Thank you. I concur with what Commissioner Lee had to say. I just want to also just thank the entire staff for being able to pivot and adjust and make these kinds of quick changes, especially with Summerstride. I know how hard you worked to create the original program, but I think what you've come up with is really dynamic and will be an asset. I know that families all over the city are just struggling with how to keep their kids engaged, entertained, and how to keep everybody involved with civic life in a new kind of way. So I just want to thank you for that ability to pivot so gracefully. And while it makes me so sad that we can't send buses out to the public, to the national parks, which was my favorite part of Summerstride. I love the drawing. I love the way to explore Golden Gate Park. So hopefully families can take advantage of that in their own way, in their own time. And also just want to thank the staff for their efforts with the racial justice program. It's so important. And it isn't a one-time thing of just like making a statement. It really will require an enormous amount of effort to really keep the conversation going and to make the kind of change that needs to happen. But I really do believe in what the library does all throughout the city. It has always been a leader in making the programs accessible and meaningful, regardless of any obstacle in anyone's way. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Wolfe. I'm monitoring and I'm looking for another commissioner comments or any questions. Okay, I do not see any further commissioner hands at this point, and so I will bring this to my own conclusion to close the librarian's report. First of all, I just want to thank Shauna as well as Alejandro. This work of trying to understand the ways in which institutions have unconsciously and then thereby unintentionally, but still causes harm in ways that we just don't know or don't understand. It's really important work because what they are doing is that institutions are made up by people. It's essentially the institutional actors, which are all of us, people who have jobs and has responsibilities. It's within our realm to be able to respond to the unconscious ways that there could be implicit biases in just the way we have policies, the way we do things, how we make decisions, who gets to be at the table, who we serve, who we have inadvertently not have served. And that's the work that they're doing. They're uncovering this. I just want to thank them so much because I've had an opportunity to sit in a couple of times with them and I've watched their work even at a distance. And they are so thoughtful, and the people that they have engaged are so thoughtful. So I'm looking forward to what happens. Clearly, I don't need to say anything about how critical this work is based upon the lack of a proper social contract in our nation. And so this racial justice work, as Commissioner Wolfe has said, it's not going to go away anytime soon because of the ways in which we did not organize ourselves quite right as a nation. And so thank you both, and thank you, Michelle, for pivoting and keeping the growth mindset during this wild curve that you were thrown to try to figure out how to continue Summerstride. And so thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for team for everything that you guys have done as well. So with that, we're going to move on to our agenda item. We have the approval of minutes that we need to do. Let me get my agenda back up here on my screen. Okay, we have the approval of the minutes of January 16th, 2020. And this is, no, actually the first one is, we're on item 6. The approval of the minutes of January 16. I stand corrected. And this is an actionable item for the commission. And so we're going to begin any presentation of the minutes, discussion, moving to general public comment, and then we'll move into our action. But at this point, I guess we'll go immediately into our general public comment. And so operations, are there members of the public who are in queue for this particular item to make a comment?
Madam President, there is one caller in the queue.
Okay, if you could unmute the caller for the caller to make a public comment, please.
Caller, your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. Again, Library Users Association, we can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. Again, libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. I have a number of comments to make about these minutes, which I think could be improved with very little effort. Should you care for accuracy and fairness. On item 1, general public comment, it says that I said the library continues to use and promote social media, and that is unethical. I don't think I said it was unethical and stopped. The issue is that the library is promoting social media that has many downsides, and it does not even tell people what some of those are and what some of the cautions should be. Instead, it just simply promotes them, and that's wrong. Including, by the way, privacy issues. With respect to item 3, branch capital projects and so on, it says that my comments about Park Branch were that it only had one bookmobile for service when it was closed. I think I was a little more vivid. I was concerned that people should be aware that when libraries close for renovation or a new building, they need to be paying close attention to what is sometimes grossly inadequate alternate service. Park Branch Library, when it closed, gave only a bookmobile service 2 days a week, totaling 7.5 hours per week. And that was, on top of everything, it was poorly signed so that it was hard to find where the bookmobile actually was located. With respect to Janet Tom, I think I warmed up very considerably and said a great deal more than that she was a gloom lifter. And I would like some of that included. And when I spoke about print notices were passively praised, it was Michael Lambert who told me 181 people requested print notices, and only when I looked more closely did it turn out that it was actually 19,000 who wanted print notices.
Thank you for your public comment. Operations, are there any further callers in the queue for public comment?
Madam President, there are no additional callers.
Okay, seeing that there's none, we are going to move back to our commission on agenda item number 6. Commissioners, is there any discussion on the minutes of January 16th? And they want to do discussion, just make sure that before we move into a motion. I see Commissioner Vice President Mall.
Oh, I was going to make a motion.
Okay, just any discussion on the minutes of January 16, 2020? Okay, seeing that there is none, I'd like to inquire whether a commissioner is ready to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of January 16th, 2020.
Okay. Is there a commissioner who will second that?
This is Commissioner Ono. I would like to second.
Thank you. It's hard to monitor. I'm toggling between documents. Thank you so much, Commissioner Ono. So we have a motion and we have a second. I will call each commissioner's name and ask that when I call your name, you please indicate an aye if you're in favor or a no if you're not in favor. I'm going to begin with Commissioner Wolfe.
Aye.
Commissioner Lee.
Aye.
Commissioner Ono.
Sorry, aye.
Commissioner Mall.
Aye.
Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well.
All right, thank you. The motion passes.
Thank you to our city librarian. And so the minutes of January 16th, 2020 has been approved. So we are going to move now to item number 7, which is approval of the minutes of February 6th. And again, this will require a commission action. At this particular time, we'd like to go to our general public comment on item 7.
Madam President, there's one caller in the queue.
Thank you, operations. If you could unmute that the caller and allow them to make a public comment.
Caller, your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. This is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. And we can be reached at libraryusers2004@yahoo.com. There's a message coming. Am I continuing or what's going on?
Continue.
I got a message from the system that interrupted me. I hope you'll add some time to my time. libraryusers2004@yahoo.com is how we can be reached. On general public comment, it says that I said there are problems with Facebook and privacy, and the library continues to promote it. I think it would be a lot fairer to say there are problems with Facebook, including privacy, and the library should not promote it, and certainly shouldn't promote it without warnings to the public. On item 2, the budget, it says that it says he is concerned about the major increase in e-collections. He said it is pay to play for people to need to use computers for access. Not clear what that means. What I mean is that there's a disproportionate emphasis on ebooks. There's nothing wrong necessarily with ebooks per se, but when they're disproportionately touted and money is spent on them, compared with other forms, then that may be a problem. On agenda item 3, the city librarian's report. I made comments about the Night of Ideas, and there was a problem with Night of Ideas, and it says that you had to get tickets in advance and you had to use a computer to get them. He said it was an enormous barrier to access for the public. I'm sure I said that because obviously if you don't have a computer or access to a computer or equal access to a computer with others, you're at a disadvantage or you're locked out. What happened to free and equal access at the library? I'm sure that I also said there was a privacy issue, and that's why I didn't want to use it. And those are all issues with online usage that the library should make clear to the patrons and perhaps not do. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Operations, are there any further callers in the queue?
Madam President, there are no additional callers in the queue.
Okay. I'd like to move it over to action. First of all, discussion before we move into action. Is there any discussion on the minutes among the commissioners? Seeing that there is none, I'd like to inquire if the commissioners is ready, would like to make a motion on the minutes of February 6, 2020. Back over. Commissioner Wolfe.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes February 6, 2020.
Thank you, Commissioner Wolfe.
I second.
Okay, who's the commissioner that made a second is?
Commissioner Mall.
Thank you, Commissioner Mall, for making a second. We're going to go through and do the roll call. I will call each commissioner's name and ask that when I call your name, please indicate aye if you're in favor or no if you're not. Commissioner Wolfe?
Aye.
Commissioner Lee?
Aye.
Commissioner Ono?
Aye.
Commissioner Mall?
Aye.
Commissioner Wong?
Aye.
And myself as a commissioner, I'm an aye as well.
The motion passes.
Thank you, commissioners, for approving the minutes of February 6, 2020. Now we are moving to our final item of this evening's agenda, which is the adjournment and requires a motion from the commission. And we'll move into our final public comment of the evening on this item.
Madam President, at present, there are no callers in the queue.
Thank you.
And now there is one.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. You don't have to say that. Operations, if you would please unmute the caller.
Caller, your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. For the benefit of the commission and running a smooth meeting, there are *3. When you press *3, there's talk from the system. It makes it hard to understand. If you're not clear whether you're on or off the list, you press *3, and then there's talking over what other people are saying. You press *3 again, and it's more talk over what's going on. I would like the Library Commission to do what I have suggested before. And speaking of I, this is Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. We can be reached at libraryusers2004 at yahoo.com. I'm hearing a lot of noise, so let me repeat it. libraryusers2004 at yahoo.com. I appreciate some of the things that the members of the commission have said with respect to free and equal service. I'm certainly appreciative of the efforts that the library says it has started with respect to racial equity. But I think that, in particular, on the issue of examining our services and policies with racial equity in mind, I think that the Library Commission should not adjourn without insisting that you have an item on the agenda that says, these are things we would like to talk about at future meetings or act on at future meetings. I won't call it new business because for some people that means something special. But an item that says, this is where commissioners can say what they would like to see on future agendas. And since there's a great deal of change in the way the library is operating and in how it affects people, I think that this would be an excellent time to have on an agenda a discussion of what the library is doing, and just as you described, services and service delivery. I think Alejandro, I forgot his last name, said that specifically. Services and services delivery at this time, where the library has gone almost completely virtual. And I've pointed out some statistics that underscore the damaging and disproportionate effects on minorities that this direction is causing.
Thank you.
3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Okay, commissioners, we're at our final item, and can I get a motion to adjourn our meeting?
I move to adjourn the meeting tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Mall. Is there a second to adjourn this evening's meeting?
Commissioner Lee, second.
Oh, thank you so much, Commissioner Lee. So let's go through the roll call so that it's properly recorded on the record. As I call your name, you'll indicate aye if you're in favor or no if you're not. Commissioner Wolfe, to adjourn. Commissioner Lee?
Aye.
Commissioner Ono?
Aye.
Vice President Mall?
Aye.
And Commissioner Huang?
Aye.
And I, as serving as a president of the Library Commission, say aye to adjourn our very first virtual meeting in the history of the San Francisco Public Library.
The motion passes.
So thank you all. Continue to be well, stay healthy, and those of you that stayed on for the duration, whether you are an employee of the San Francisco Public Library or you are interested in the business of this library and you care about it, thank you so much for staying to the end. And we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you all again. Thank you.